Hello, everybody. So it's time for the first diagram from Unit 2.8, which is the market failure due to externalities unit. And in this video, I'm going to talk about negative externalities of production. Okay, so negative externalities of production happen when the production of a good or service generates an external cost that society has to bear. So it's the act of producing the good or service that generates this external cost. Like, for example, pollution can be a negative externality of production. Maybe the depletion or overuse of a common pool resource, like the damage to the atmosphere that comes from things that are produced in factories, because factories often have carbon emissions, right? So that's damage to the atmosphere, which is a common pool resource. Or, for example, the production of paper. When there is an overproduction of paper, that leads to the depletion of the world's forests because we have to cut down trees to make paper. Okay, so these are all negative externalities of production: pollution or damage to common pool resources like oceans, forests, the atmosphere, and so on. Okay, so let's look at the diagram. Okay, so again, you have to understand that the MPC curve, that is the supply curve. It's this blue curve here. And the MPB curve is the demand curve. Okay, so MPC is always supply, MPB is always demand. Where they intersect, that's equilibrium. So QE and PE. Okay, so remember, demand is always the MPB, supply is always the MPC. Where they intersect, that's equilibrium. That's what's actually happening in the market, QE and PE. The market is producing QE and the market is charging this price, PE. However, there is an external cost, like, say, for example, pollution or damage to a common pool resource. That external cost is this vertical distance between the MPC and the MSC curve. When you add the external cost, now you have the marginal cost to society, the MSC. So because of the external cost, example pollution, the MSC is greater than the MPC. The cost to society of producing this good or service is higher than the cost to the producer. The marginal social cost is higher than the marginal private cost. Private cost, that's the cost to the producer of this good or service. Okay, so the marginal social cost is greater than the marginal private cost because there's an external cost that society has to bear. Okay, the intersection of MSC and MSB, so the intersection of MSC and MSB is what we call the point of allocative efficiency. Okay, this gives us Q opt. This is the ideal quantity that the market should be producing. So the market is producing QE, but it should be producing Q opt. And this is P opt. This is the price that would accurately reflect the cost to society. Okay, so don't think of it as like the perfect price as much as this would be the price if that cost to society was reflected or borne by the producer instead of imposed on society. Okay, so now because QE is greater than Q opt, what the market is actually producing, QE, is greater than what the market should be producing, Q opt, there is an over allocation of resources that is manifesting as overproduction of this good or service. So if you imagine this is the market for paper. So we've got here, let's imagine price of paper and quantity of paper. There's an overproduction of paper, and the external cost is the deforestation that's associated, cutting down trees and the deforestation, the damage to the world's forests that is occurring. And remember, forests are a common pool resource. Okay, they are non-excludable, but they are rivalrous. Okay, non-excludable means it's hard to exclude people from benefiting from the resource. Rivalrous means one person's use of the resource actually reduces the amount available for everybody else. Okay, so because of the external cost here, the common pool resource, the forest, is being damaged. If you imagine this is the market for fish, price of fish, quantity of fish, the external cost would be the damage to the world's oceans. Okay, the depletion of fishing stock in the world's oceans. Again, oceans are a common pool resource. Okay, they are non-excludable. It's hard to exclude people from using the resource, but they are rivalrous. Okay, if people are fishing at an unsustainable rate faster than the fish have a chance to reproduce, that will lead to a depletion of the fishing stock in the ocean. There will be overfishing. Okay, so again, remember, the market equilibrium is the intersection of MPC and MPB, but the point of allocative efficiency is the intersection of MSC and MSB. Now, you'll notice on the demand side, MPB and MSB are the same. This is just for simplicity. We're assuming that on the demand side, the benefit to the consumer and the benefit to society are the same. The split, this is not a shift, by the way. This is just a split, okay? The split between the supply curve and the actual cost to society as a whole, not just the producer, is why MSC is higher than the MPC. The cost to society is higher than the cost to the individual producer. Why? Because there's an external cost that the producer is not paying for. Society is bearing that cost. Okay, now that creates a welfare loss. So I'm going to give you a trick. Welfare loss is always the triangle that points from QE to QOpt. So many students will shade this triangle by accident here, say that's the welfare loss. That's incorrect. The welfare loss must point from QE to QOpt. Okay, so in the case of a negative externality, the welfare loss triangle will always point to the y-axis. Okay, the point of the triangle here is pointing to the y-axis. This is the welfare loss. There is a market failure. Okay, now remember, negative externalities of production can damage and deplete common pool resources. You can't really represent a common pool resource using a diagram, but you can represent the negative externality of production that's damaging that common pool resource. So for example, you can't really say price of ocean and quantity of ocean, but you can draw a diagram for fish, price of fish and quantity of fish. The equilibrium quantity of fish is greater than the ideal quantity of fish, and the external cost here is overfishing and basically the damage to the ocean, which is a common pool resource. Remember, common pool resources are non-excludable. It's hard to exclude people from using the resource, but they are rivalrous. One person's use of the resource will leave less for everybody else. Okay, so remember, let's quickly review. The MSC is higher than the MPC because there's an external cost that the individual producer is not bearing. And this leads to a situation where the equilibrium quantity, QE, is greater than the allocatively efficient quantity, QOpt. There's an over-allocation of resources, and that's leading to an overproduction of that good or service. So here, there's an overproduction of fish. Okay, that creates a welfare loss, which is always the triangle pointing from QE to QOpt. And examples of this external cost is damage or depletion of common pool resources. I hope you found this video useful. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, and like, subscribe, share this video with your friends, and have a great one. Bye.